Hello, everybody. My name is BenBessick, and I'm here to present to you today on the open source JS tools for housing activists and advocates, which is my Master's of Science project for this program. So let's dive in and see what that actually means. First things, I'd like to introduce the problem of being unhoused in the United States. In 2023, the number that they counted was roughly 20 and 10,000 US residents being unhoused at some point during that year. And this is absolutely an undercount because the ways in which it has to be done. And of course, if we can't manage to house all these people, we're probably not counting everybody who needs a house. Another important thing to understand is that mental health and addiction, that's the stigma. That's why people are unhoused, but it's definitely not true. It's probably the stigma because the subpopulation of unhoused individuals who are chronically unhoused, that is a primary driver for why they are chronically unhoused, but they are a very small percentage of the number of people who are actually unhoused in any given year. Most people who are unhoused, they're unhoused for a very short period of time. It's 2 weeks to 2 or 3 months. And it entirely boils down to a mismatch between their income at the time and the cost of housing at that time. And when the intersection of those does not match up, people become unhoused. And that obviously creates a lot of trauma, a lot of extra work, a lot of pain, and financial hardship for everybody who's involved in that. And while that should be an adequate motivator to think about this from the capitalist society perspective, prevention being less expensive than cure is certainly a way to look at it and to explain it to people. So this is the kind of thing that we need that I want to focus on, and what made me want to do this particular project. So to understand exactly what I wanted to do, there's a couple of things to note. We all know that JS tools, they require expertise to build. That's why we're in this program. That's why this program exists. So we all understand that. We also understand that consumers of GIS products have the very varied needs in terms of what we have to build for them. And while we look at everything in a spatial context, that spatial context has the context, that it exists within, why people need the tools, and so that there's just a wide variety of what people need, and so a wide variety of tools are required, and we're constantly finding new ways to build new things for people. Another thing to understand, and we'll get more into this in a minute, is that open source software in particular, and software sort of in general, has come along with a set of tools that are widely available that allow for distributed development that is decoupled from any kind of hierarchy, where you don't need an organization to bring a bunch of programmers together or a bunch of developers or experts together to make something. You can have a bunch of people organically come together and collaborate on something in a way that is still organized, but builds, and in an organic fashion, it comes together and it moves apart as sort of the need arises. And so my project was to create a roadmap for taking this decoupled development idea of open source software and then using it to link the advocate activist space and the GIS professional space, so that you could get those two things bridged in a way that is organic, that doesn't require some sort of hierarchical system to come in there and connect a GIS professional and like give them a job to do this work for these advocates, these activists who probably don't have the organization and money to make such a thing happen. So that's the goal, is to sort of create a roadmap, a prototype essentially, of how you could use this open source tool set to make that happen. So one more bit of information to get the kind of some of the words we're going to use is the vocabulary here is Git. It's an open source distributed version control tool, which basically just means it's a way for you to keep track of changes you make to software that you're developing, or things, projects that you're writing. Anything that has files in it can be in Git. And because it keeps track of all the changes that you make, you can use that to work side by side with somebody who's they're not really side by side with you. They're somewhere else. They're doing their own thing, and you could take their changes and you could take your changes and you can merge them together into a final product that actually works. And so that is sort of the heart of distributed development. And the website GitHub is just a place where these Git repositories, they're called, where the projects live. can be available to the public, and they're probably the most popular site for doing this. They offer a lot of documentation, a lot of tools for distributing these projects and for allowing people to collaborate, which of course is really the key here, is to be able to collaborate on these things. And using Git to do this, it's industry standard, even in closed software. A lot of closed software projects also use Git and these workflows. So there's a lot of documentation, a lot of understanding, a lot of know-how. And so that sort of the knowledge infrastructure exists to bring together people in a distributed fashion, both users and builders of tools to come together and to make tools and to iteratively make those tools better, more specific, or whatever it needs. So those sort of concepts come together to sort of provide the basis for what it is I tried to do here. So I decided to make a prototype that would hopefully demonstrate that this is doable and how it might be done. And so I just came up with a couple of tools that I thought might be useful in this space and followed a very simple workflow to sort of just come up with the idea for the tool, and then gather the required data, and then the very important step of documenting that collection process, because this tool is going to be used by people who are not GIS professionals. They're not data scientists necessarily. So that needs to be well documented. And then I built processes and templates in a product called QGIS. We'll get into that in a moment, to process that data and to turn it into mapping products. And then again, the very important documentation of how do you use those if you're not a GIS professional, so that people could actually get use out of the product. And then I went and just put that into the project repository, and I did that 3 times to create 3 different sort of example tools that could be used as a roadmap for how to make this happen. So let's take a quick look at the project repository. This website is GitHub, and this is the Git repository housing toolkit that I created for the project. This is what lives inside there. Some of these are standard things. Some of them are specific to this project. The ones that you need to know about are discussed as a user that you need to know about are described in the documentation, which starts with this README file. This is a standard Git thing, and GitHub and most other Git repositories, they automatically sort of display this right away so that you can get an idea of what is this project, what am I doing here, what's going on, how do I use this in a very sort of general sense. And so that's what I did here is I filled this out with a sort of shortened version of what I've sort of given all of you, and then sort of dive right into the prerequisites of things you'll need, because you have to download QGIS. It's an open source software package for doing GIS work, and it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So it's most people who have a computer, a laptop, or a desktop, they can use it. And you also have to download this project, this Git repository, and this describes how to do that. And it's all right on this page where you just follow the same directions, and you can get the project down onto your local computer. And then really quickly, I talk about how to contribute and in that sort of collaborative thing that everybody can do. At the infrastructure for doing that, for understanding that, for workflows, for best practices, it's all widely documented by people across the internet, and GitHub in particular has a large amount of information there. So I went ahead and created some links to places you can go look at that. And so if you actually want to contribute, if you actually want to do more than just consume this, that gives you sort of a jumping off place if you don't already have knowledge of this infrastructure. So once you're done with this part, there's the 2 other guides that you need. One is the collecting the data, and one is getting started. So we'll just jump to the collecting data really quick, and that just brings up another document where I tried with lots of images as well as text to show like how to do the basic things. All of the tools require the Tigerline geo package from the Census Bureau, and it shows how to get that. One of the tools needs data from HUD, and you have to register for it, so it walks you through that process. 2 of them use data.census.gov to get tables from the American Community Survey, and so it walks you through how to do that. Again, assuming that you really don't know anything about this and you just need basic instructions on like search for this question, select this table, and then download it. And it's like I even included animated GIFs like showing like what that work looks like, in addition to the words explaining how that's done. So once you have the data, then you can go to the Getting Started guide. And the Getting Started guide covers the prereqs, making sure that you did download the QGIS software, that you did download the project, and that you did look at the data sources guide and get the data that you need. And all the tools, they run exactly the same way. And I tried to make it all as standardized as possible as a best practice. And then I made the documentation, go through everything from once you got QGIS open to how to, open a project, where in the repository you find each tool, um, how you select them, open them, what it'll look like once you do, loading in with the base map, and then how to the GIF here and the words, they show you how to go and find the model runner and open that up. And then I walk you through how to fill it out and like some of the important distinctions, like that you need to use layers when you're using the geo packages, and how to browse for those layers, expand layer out, find which piece you're looking for, and that those steps are the same on all three of the tools that exist. And then there's individual data for each of the tools, and it shows you how to get that, how to run it, that that you'll get a log will pop up, that you will see an error about features that do not match, that's normal and the tool's aware of it, and you can just click past it, that's okay, and that you should see something, a choropleth like this um, when the tool finishes running. Then it gives you the basics on the most important ways to sort of interact with these maps, to pan and to zoom, and how to make use of the identify tool. All the data is cleaned up by the models so that only the stuff that you would actually want to see is left, giving you things like the census tract name, as well as the, you know, like the percentage that generated the choropleth, as well as the raw numbers that were used to generate that, so you can understand better what's going on there. And then it gives you just quickly like, hey, the data looks a little different for the other tools, but it's the same process to get it in there, and this is what it looks like. Just trying to cover all the bases for people who are not GIS professionals. So this is really just a basic sort of like, this is how you could build out this tool set. What I'd really like to do in the future is to get more example tools and more complex ones, specifically bivariate choropleths is something I think would be hugely useful in this space, but QGIS does not handle those very well natively. And everything at this point seems to require a lot of workarounds and add-ons that would really complicate the process. And so time is needed to figure out how to get around that in a way that would not make the tool needlessly complicated, too complicated to be of use to people. And then the other thing I would like to do is get a wider array of data sources, particularly API-based data sources. In particular, the Census Bureau has uh, APIs that do not require authentication. And so, you don't need a username and password. So it should be possible to bake those into the tool so that we can skip a lot of that data gathering step, because that would be the most ideal thing, is that they open up a file and they go to the model and they say run, essentially, because everything else sort of fills itself in, and then it builds the whole thing on the fly. That would be the most ideal sort of scenario, in my opinion. So really, to wrap this up, shelter is a necessity for survival, and our species decided that land would be owned by governments and then the people within those governments. And if all land is owned, then we basically created a moral and ethical responsibility to make sure that everybody gets some value out of that land. They get enough to meet the basic needs of survival, that they can no longer go and find themselves like we did, way back in the day, kind of a thing. So we're obviously not doing that. We're failing to do that. So we need activism and advocacy to come up with ways for our society to better meet the needs of its people. And those activists and advocates, they need tools that can do that. And those tools have a very specific contextual relevance, and they have the knowledge in their communities. And then there are, over on this side, there's GIS professionals like us, and we have the knowledge of how to make tools like that, but not the connection to the context in which that they need to address. And so we have the technology with open source software to bring these things together. There's a whole methodology out there that's been very successful for decades now for bringing together experts who build things and the experts who use tools. And so we can do this, and this is how. So thank you everybody for being here, and I'll take any questions you have now.